I've been playing Clash Royale for over 5 years, and I would say I'm pretty experienced at this game. With over 3,563 wins and counting, with nearly 2,000 of them being 3-count victories, I would say I've come close to mastering this game.
But my biggest achievement yet? Hitting Legendary Arena, the peak of ladder. Now I know what you might be thinking. Legendary Arena, that's just 9k trophies, that isn't that hard.
But here's the catch. I didn't do it with meta high skill deck, I did it with this one. Welcome to the most broken deck that no one is talking about, and why you should use it. Alright, to begin, let me introduce you to this deck. It's a Golem beatdown variation that consists of Golem, Night Witch, Arrow, Skeleton Army, Clone, Baby Dragon, Evolution Firecracker, and Evolution Mega Knight. All coming in as a whopping 4.4 average elixir cost. This is not something you want to see in high trophy ladder. So let's start with a breakdown of the roles these cards play in the deck. Golem. This is the main win condition in this deck. It's the tank, the attack, the center of offense in this deck. It's not much to say here. Just know that sometimes, besides its usual like offensive capabilities, it can be used to kite some pushes, or just purely be used to defense, or maybe run down time on the clock. Night Witch. This is the main support of this deck. Placed behind Golem in the staple Golem beatdown push. It's just a very staple part of beatdown. It also can be put behind like Mega Knight, Night Witch, or just on its own as its little push, and it's a pretty decent defensive card too. Kind of like my replacement for like a mini P.E.K.K.A, a Night Witch instead as my defensive card. To be fair, it's not the best, like there are better mini tanks like Knight, but still as a defensive card, it does an alright job. It can be used to counter mini tanks like Valkyrie, mini P.E.K.K.A, and Lumberjack. It's also good as a general DPS unit to defend against win conditions like Giant, Hog Rider, Battle Ram, etc. And while it's not a complete counter, the Bats Night Witch generate can amount to a good amount of DPS. Like let's say there's a Giant coming down, the Night Witch will be a pretty good counter to it. It might get 1 or 2 hits, but as you'll see later in this video, Golem is either completely destroy them or get destroyed. So chip damage to my tower isn't that important. Skeleton Army. An amazing defensive card, and it works well if the opponent does not expect it. Like the first time they place a hog or a prince and you just put down the skeleton army and it completely counters it and gives a little bit of a push, it gets a little more predictable, especially if they have log or arrows and they can predict it and they can just like destroy your entire army. But that's where the bait comes in, which we'll mention later. It's also good for split pushing as well. If I have a golem beatdown push on one side and I put Skarmy on the other side, they'll have to counter both, and if they're low on elixir, they won't be able to do that. Arrows. Literally just used to counter Princess Dark Goblin and especially Evolution Firecracker. Evolution Firecracker could be a huge counter to this deck, so I added arrows in this deck just to counter it. It can also be used as chip damage, but really it's just for Evolution Firecracker and like maybe a Princess and Dark Goblin as well. Firecracker, a huge part of this deck. Firecracker is a card that can basically do what Firecracker does best. Be an annoying defensive card, and a good transition card too. She can also be used to chip away the tower, which works really well if there's units defending the tower. Let's say I put a golem and it's moving up front and they place a P.E.K.K.A, and then I can use a Firecracker, and the splash damage that hits behind can be good chip damage and cause me to win the game even. This is definitely true if Firecracker's in its evolved form, where it'll do a lot more damage and is a much better defensive card. The opponent tries to split push me, I can put Firecracker down the middle, maybe like a Skarmy or a Night Witch to sort of just like kite them both to the same area. And if they have arrows, well, Firecracker then becomes bait for my Hail Mary push, which I will explain soon. Baby Dragon, this probably is the least useful card in this deck, but it's still quite useful. It's just an air defense tool that can be used to counter like some air and ground swarms. Like if they're playing Lumberloon, my only air defense is like Night Witch and Firecracker, which are okay, but like still you kind of need like an air tank. It can be used also like if they're pushing up and then they place a Firecracker or Princess behind, I can place Baby Dragon there to counter that. And the ability to fly over the water is probably its most important trait for me, because then let's say there's a golem and then a Night Witch and then they place a building, I can just make the Baby Dragon fly over the water, maybe like tank if it's like an Inferno Tower, or maybe just sit behind it and like chip away if it's like a cannon or a Tesla. Mega Knight. Oh, what do we have here? Mega Knight is the defense card. It counters most lands cards, I think all land cards except for P.E.K.K.A, but that's just the surface. It can also be used to counter like swarm creators like Night Witch if you have arrows or Firecracker or something, or a Witch, which is a much more common one. It can be used to counter like fireballies like Barbarians, Battle Ram, Magic Archer, Wizard, the list goes on and on. When the evolution hits, let's say like the opponent places down like an Elixir Golem or like a Giant, I place Evolution Mega Knight, push them back, place a Night Witch behind, and boom, that's a push that works defensively and offensively. And it also can be used as sort of like an alternative to Golem. If I don't want to reveal my Golem yet, I can use like Night Witch Mega Knight, and that can be kind of like a DIY push, and even if it doesn't work out, then I'll get my evolution, and like a Mega Knight splash push with a Golem beatdown is just overwhelming for the opponent, and it's not a good hard for them. Now for the most important card on this list, Clone is the center of this deck. So where do I even begin? Let's start with like the basic ones. I can clone Firecracker for like more chip damage. If like, let's say they're defending a golem and yeah, I put a Firecracker chip, I can clone that to do more chip damage. I can clone Night Witch for more bats, more DPS, clone Skeleton Army, you know, just to surprise them. Or clone Golem to do more damage when it explodes and make it like a better defensive card. But really, it's mostly for like an amazing burst option. Let's say I put a Golem, maybe I put a Baby Dragon and Night Witch, and the opponent's defending with like a tower and stuff, and then bam, clone, and it's just overwhelming. He'll just do so much DPS in such a quick time that if the opponent doesn't react quick enough or doesn't have the cards to defend it, it's just over for them. It is an overwhelming card. And for 3 elixir, the amount of value I can get out of this cloning an entire push is insane. It's hard to explain how important this card is if you can bait out the arrows and poison. And this is where the bait comes in. Mostly clone can be countered by like arrows, tornado, you know, fireball sometimes, but if I bait that out with like a Firecracker or a Skarmy, then they're not able to defend it and it's just overwhelming for them and they just can't deal with it. So you can surprise the opponent with, and if you can bait and burst and surprise the opponent with a huge clone, it can just mess up the opponent and lead to a 3-crown victory, which is usually how I get my 3 crowns. It is just the core of this deck. Maybe your Golem's pushing up and they counter the Swarm and you clone that to destroy the Skarmy, and something like maybe clone the Night Witch so it deals a lot more damage. Maybe clone the Mega Knight to get that extra jump and clone the Firecracker to get more chip damage. It just goes on and on and on. Clone is kind of like the center of the Hail Mary push. So let's say it's like 1 minute left, double elixir, and then I just suddenly clone and I haven't revealed my clone yet and they're just done. This works especially well if I bait out all their splash cards before. It's the epicenter of the deck. If you can get creative, the possibilities with clone are almost limitless. There aren't many like meta decks that counter this deck, but there are cards. Let me explain. So the 2 biggest counters to this deck in my experience are Executioner and Inferno Tower. The Executioner with his splash damage and high HP makes a clone spell and bats for Night Witch just really not good. Like for example, if I place a Golem and then a Night Witch behind and the Executioner lines up and it kills the Night Witch, it's just really not a good push. And Executioner also counters cards like Firecracker, Baby Dragon, and especially Clone, which is a huge problem. If the clone doesn't work because the Executioner gets a good shot, my push is over and I'll probably lose to like some crazy Evolution P.E.K.K.A, Executioner, Electro Dragon, some crazy push like that. His high HP means you can't really chip him down or like kill him with arrows. Like at least with Evolution Firecracker I can arrows it. I can't arrows Executioner. It's too much HP. So if I ever come up with an Executioner, I just try to like bait it out by using like Skarmy and maybe Mega Knight and then try to push there. But realistically, unless the opponent is not that skillful, it's Executioner is almost a hard counter to this deck. Like think about it. I can counter Night Witch, Golem, even maybe not full counter, but defensively Firecracker, Skarmy, Clone, Baby Dragon. It basically counters everything in this deck except for Mega Knight. Like if they have Executioner, I have to focus on the counter attack because there's no way I'm winning off offense. Inferno Tower literally just takes out the 2 tanks of my deck, Mega Knight and Golem. Now I can bait the Inferno Tower by using Mega Knight at the bridge and then Goleming after, but if they cycle back to it, it's basically over. This one is less of a hard counter, I'd say. It's easier to get around, especially if they place the Inferno Tower wrong and you can use like Skarmy or Baby Dragon or like the bats to tank, or you overwhelm them and surprise them quick with like a clone and destroy the Inferno Tower and push to kill the Princess Tower, but still it's a little like, it's a pretty bad counter. Especially if they have a really good placement, they're able to kite the Golem far away and expose my troops that are behind them that are relying on the Golem, especially if there's splash troops on the opponent's side. It can really just mess up my deck. Like let's say there's a wizard and the wizard's locked onto the Golem, but when the Golem gets kited away, it locks onto the Night Witch or the Baby Dragon, and yeah, my push is just gone. Alright, that's enough theory. Let me show you a pretty good game of mine. Okay, so this is a game in Legendary Arena, which if you don't know is the highest arena in ladder. We start off the game and bam, we're matched into Omega Death. We start off the game with a little bit of lag, which is always amazing, as you know in Clash Royale games. We place down that Night Witch, and of course we're lagging, which is amazing once again. And usually the point here is to get like a Night Witch and Mega Knight. It's kind of like a semi-beatdown push, but since he plays Ram Rider, I'm going to have to use Mega Knight to counter the Ram Rider, so there we go. That Ram Rider might get a hit, but it's okay in the grand scheme of things. And now he places down Executioner to counter my Night Witch, and this is really good because what that means is now maybe I can play a Golem beatdown push without the fear of Executioner. If you remember, Executioner is like one of the hard counters to this deck, so the fact that I'm able to bait him out is pretty good already. I don't want to reveal that I have Golem yet, although it should be pretty obvious, but just in case that he starts preparing and not like throwing his Executioner to counter the Golem beatdown push. So I push with Skeleton Army, and then he Mother Witches, which is not good because Mother Witch and Night Witch, when they verse each other, Mother Witch always wins. And this is not looking like a very good push already. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do here? I could either let them connect or counter myself, and I decide to let them connect, and I'm going to try to do a huge counter push, which is, let's see if it works out. So I don't want my Baby Dragon to die, so I Mega Knight him, and I also don't want to do Golem, because Mega Knight will attack the Executioner if he plays Executioner, so I don't really have to worry about it that much. And now he freezes, which is a very interesting freeze. I try to put down Firecracker to get some chip damage off those skeletons on the tower, and this ends up doing pretty well. It does activate King Tower, but you know what? It's well worth it. It's not exactly an equal trade. He got more damage than me. Oh wait, no, I got more damage than him. But the fact that I'm Crown Tower 14 and he's 15 is a really good start. So I try to get the Skarmy down and just out of the Witch's range, and there we go. I place down Baby Dragon, trying to counter the Witch, but I think what ends up killing me is actually the skeletons, which is kind of sad. So now I'm down. They have a hard counter to me, Executioner. They also have Ram Rider and Mother Witch, which are also not good matchups. Ram Rider because you can slow down the Golem, and Mother Witch because she counters Night Witch. But he places on his Executioner, I just go off and rush him. It's all or never. So now he places down Royal Recruits. I'm going to use Firecracker to get chip damage on the tower to basically get a guaranteed tower. And now on the other side, I see those three. I need Mega Knight to help me out here, so I Mega Knight. And I make a little blunder here. I should have Mega Knighted so the Executioner shouldn't hit my tower, but still, in the end, we have a pretty strong push coming up right here. And especially with all this build up, I place my Skarmy down the Mega Knight to tank, and then this is going to be a push. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have cloned that because it was absolutely useless, but it's okay because we ended up getting the tower, and now we're up. So now what I need to do is let those Firecrackers hit on the King Tower and kind of just stall him out, because he can either defend his King Tower or attack my Princess Tower, and I know that he can't really attack right now unless he wants me to win. And there he freezes it. He knows that he's not going to win, but he doesn't want me to win. So there you go. That's just a standard Golem beatdown deck. Like I said before, Executioner is kind of a hard counter, but this opponent didn't really use it very well, and he honestly was not very good. So just overall a very overwhelming deck. My final thoughts. Should you use this deck? Well, it's a mixed bag. It doesn't take that much skill, to be honest, and if you're not winning by a lot, you're basically dead. Like, they can probably chip the tower better than you, and long drawn out games where they counter you can usually end for the downfall for you, unless you can get some evolution Firecracker attacks to the Princess Tower, something like that. It's a really Hail Mary, like kill or be killed deck. It's not like slow chip damage like Hog Rider. It's just blatant in your face Golem, Night Witch, hopefully bait out something and then clone and hopefully just destroy them. It's supposed to be an overwhelming deck, but when it can't overwhelm, it's really underwhelming, if that makes sense. And with the addition of more evolutions like Dark Goblin, Electro Dragon, or even the old evolutions like Wizard, some of these can be extremely hard to overcome, especially if you can't bait them out or your opponent's quite smart. I used to run this deck in Splash Shard, but I really just wanted to at least Legendary Arena with just this deck, so I quit Splash Shard. And Splash Shard was too much skill, I don't want to do all that. And I really only got to this deck to 9k because I have so much experience playing Beatdown. It just comes naturally at this point what to do, and I still mess up because I'm not that good at the game. I kind of just rely on this deck to overwhelm the opponent and carry me to victory. And it's really, really annoying sometimes when I see my high elixir push get wiped out by a tornado execution. Like, damn, that's annoying. But on the flip side, when this deck is strong, it's broken. Like, there's basically nothing your opponent can do if you split push a Skarmy and a Golem Night Witch clone. Like, oh my goodness, what are they going to do to that? It's so funny watching people with high skill decks like 2.6 run out of options and just get overwhelmed and just get 3 crowned if they can't deal with this push. Like, no matter how many times you cycle to cannon, if I just keep cloning and spamming, eventually you're gonna run out of options. If you can really surprise your opponent or catch them off guard, especially if you can bait out their spells, it almost feels like cheating. A lot of opponents are quite surprised when I whip out this deck, especially since it's a deck nobody uses among all these sweaty cycle decks that are on the meta right now. And yeah, you could use a better deck maybe, and you can reach 9k trophies faster, but there is one more thing I want to talk about. One thing that I haven't really mentioned, which is the reason why I play this deck, and it's not for its meta, it's not because it's viable, it's not because it's the best deck, it's just because it's enjoyable to play. And that's just the core of the deck. It's just entertaining. It's just a really fun deck to play. Like, seriously, it's just so fun baiting out opponents' cards and crushing them with the 3-count victory. I mean, without this deck, I'd probably just quit Clash Royale or try not to grind to Legendary Arena, because why do I want to play Hog Cycle all the way to 9k? I don't want to do that. Let's be honest, in a game where pay-to-win, sweaty decks, and toxic players overwhelm the meta, some players just want a fun, relaxing, brain-off just deck. And that's what this Golem deck is, which I'm gonna name Golem Clone Down Splash Bait. It's just an exciting deck to play in, and it's one I'm still not bored of yet. Yeah, like, I haven't switched this deck in a long time. I remember the last time I played with Splash Shard, but I don't know, that was probably like 2 years ago or even more. And like, When there's pay to win players getting evolution every other second, you just want to overwhelm them with a low skill deck and just prove that you're just better than them, even though you're not. I would recommend this deck for people who are 1. Bad at the game, 2. Don't like high skill decks, and 3. Just want to have fun. Because if I'm being honest, the best part of this deck is not its competitive viability. Like, yeah, it's not the most unviable deck on the market, but it sure ain't the best. It's just its entertainment. I think that's the reason why you should play this deck. It allows for relaxing, casual gameplay, making it perfect for those who don't enjoy meta decks or just want to enjoy the game. Do you really want to keep switching decks or spending money to get the new meta deck to win the most games, or do you just want to Golem, Night Witch, Split Push, Skarmy, Clone, destroy them? Like, something like that is just much more enjoyable than, in my opinion, doing all these high meta decks. Like, yeah, sure, if you want to be the best player ever, and like, sure, use another deck, but that's not really the appeal of this deck. It kind of brings back to like the 2018 days where like Golem Beatdown, when the game was like actually fun. For all this evolution stuff, it's kind of like a blast in the past in its own way, even though it does use evolutions. It kind of brings that OG feel back to the game. Like, it feels like kind of like you're playing in 2016. Maybe not 2016, but like in the earlier game when the game was still considered fun by most of its players. Because it's not a sweaty deck that requires pay to win decks. It's just a fun, overwhelming deck that can surprise the opponent. And it kind of does bring me pleasure to beat these like extremely high skill players with this stupid brain dead deck, and just seeing their reactions with those emotes and like good luck is just priceless sometimes. And as someone with over 5 years in the game, 3,563 games when counting, and 9,000 trophies, I can confidently say that this deck, at least for me, has brought the fun back into Clash Royale. And in 2025, that is quite the achievement. And that, my friends, is why you should use this broken deck. Use this deck not for its competitiveness, not for its viability, but for its enjoyable playstyle. Because, in my opinion, and especially when it comes to Clash Royale, enjoyability is the most important thing of any game. Thanks for watching, everyone. I know this is a deviation from my normal Battlecast content, but I'm trying to expand the range of the channel for more than just that game. So thank you for watching this far. And since you watched this far, you're probably increasing my watch time percentage, so thank you for that. If you enjoyed this video, it's gonna perform poorly, I'm pretty sure, because it's a deviation once again. And so if you could leave a like, subscribe, and maybe even comment a future video idea, that'd be very much appreciated, and help this video get shared to more people. For this channel, I have some things up and coming. I think I have a collaboration with the YouTuber Mr. Cat coming up, so look forward to that. Yeah, my next video is probably going to be a Battle Cats video. That's all I really want to say. Thank you for watching, and have a great one. Goodbye.